show. I'm always fortunate to be joined by the executive producer of the show, Ryan Bukovetsky. Follow him at Ryan B. Ski and Ryan B. Ski1 on Instagram. Follow me at That's Davis. We have to bring in another show because we getting flused. Flu. It's like
we're getting flusy in here.
What's that company that John Cena does the insurance with the cow on there?
Yeah, what is that one? Blue Ops?
Yeah, someone blue. So if you've been living under a rock, the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts, Matt Eberflus, has been hired by Ryan Poles, allegedly, to be the next head coach of our Chicago Bears. One thing, and I always, today Kenton had practice, so I was sitting in the car longer, and when I'm sitting in the car, I like to go to my station, and I'm a 670 guy from listening and being on the airwaves, fortunately, a little bit. I was listening to Parkland Spiegel and Parkin. You get what I mean, Parkins and Spiegel. And Matt Spiegel mentioned something that I had not heard. I knew that Bill Polian was not there for the interview. But what he said was that a source of his said that Polian wasn't happy about that. So if Ryan Poles is already thumbing his nose at Bill Polian, shout out to you, Ryan Poles. But shout out. I'm happy. Now you can go now. I have the job. He's like, Ryan, I got you this job. He's like, I appreciate that, but you can go. So Flus is in the house. I was talking to my Ryan Bukovetsky right here, about how on the Under Center podcast, one of my co-hosts and writer for NBCSports.com Chicago, Alex Shapiro, was the first person on the show to come out of nowhere and bring up Matt Eberflus. So it's kind of been our thing for me, Eric and Tony at least, and also Adam Hogue a little bit, to kind of talk about Flus. You know what I'm saying? So actually, when we thought yesterday that Dan Quinn had the job, on the text thread, I was sending texts like, bye to Flus and sad face or whatever. And then I wake up and Matt Eberflus is now the head coach. For anybody who doesn't know, he's coming with a Tampa 2, adjusted for modern day football. Rob Marinelli was his mentor. So we're getting back to some Lovey stuff. He's very detailed. That's one thing that, if you're telling me he can be better than Lovey, I'm interested. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I guess I would take Lovey, but I need more playoff wins and also just more chances to make the playoffs than what we had during the Lovey Smith era. But I can't say if I guess I'm somewhat excited, but I don't know. I don't know what Ryan Poles is going to do as a general manager. I think he was one of the better candidates, so I'm happy that he was selected as the head coach. And Matt Eberflus, I feel like, is a guy that was trending up and was going to get a head coaching job probably this season or next, particularly with how well that defense had been playing over there the last 4 years after Josh McDaniels just dropped him in Indy and broke back out to New England. So but I like it, but I don't know. And we'll find out really if this is going to be the right guy. During the season, we'll know a little bit, but it's going to take a couple years to really know, because he could start off hot like Matt Nagy for all we know, and we could, and that's a fear. Now, unfortunately, with this dysfunctional relationship that we have with the Bears, we're more fearful than we are resolute.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not like over the moon, but of the finalists, he was my favorite out of the three. And personally, I love the idea of write a check to Jim Caldwell and make him your OC today. I love that idea personally, just because that's a guy that if you pay him well, I mean, sure, next year he could be up for another head coaching gig if he did a great job with the Bears. And that's pretty much anybody, right? And that's the big downside with Matt Eberflus. He's a defensive guy. We've been through this how many times before with the Bears? If they find anyone of kind of like candidacy that's worthwhile, and I don't know if you can hear it, we got the fighter jets flying over the top right now.
Oh, okay, I hear it. Yeah, I do. You're putting on a show? It's a show that's going on?
No, every day.
You buy a base.
Every day. Yeah, buy a base. Every day they're flying.
Okay. Oh,
it's crazy, too. They're always going
I didn't know you stayed down the street from Area 51.
That's what my mom was asking.
Ryan, is aliens over there?
Area 51. But, honestly, it's so cool because they break the sound of speed and you just see them so far ahead of where the sound is. Like, you're looking at the sound, they're like, oh, it's over there.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's dope. Like, it's pretty
Okay.
cool.
Okay.
But with Eberflus, basically just saying our biggest fear.
Flus.
Loose.
Eberflus. I just want you to get it because they had to balance
Eberflus.
that. Yes, there we go. Let's get it right.
Floosy Lucy. Yeah.
Flusy.
Lucy Floosy. He better not do anything.
Pose and Flus or
Dark
Flus
after
and
dark?
Pose? Which way are we doing this? Pose and Flus and Flus. It's like a cop show or something. Pose and
See, I'm thinking of Steve Sarkisian with Sark After Dark. Like, Floosy better be careful because he's got Lucy Floosy built in already.
Flus. Oh yeah, that's gonna be a head. You just gave a headline away right there. Lucy, you know that's gonna be on the Sun Times and Trib after a loss. Lucy, especially if the defense plays.
Lucy
Lucy.
But with the defensive coach, the big downfall is if you hire a great offense coordinator, especially in Chicago, with all the eyes, with how terrible the Bears are always offensively, those guys are pretty much grabbed up right away, right? Like they're going to be a head coach somewhere else. That's why, like, the big plus with Matt Nagy at the time was like, hey, you've got your guru. He's not going to go anywhere. You can build this offensive system and you don't got to worry at all about losing him as a head coach anywhere else. If someone takes the assistants, fine. We still got the guru. It's all good. So I definitely have that concern for sure. With that, I guess, like, for you, I'm just kind of curious before I go into the pros of Flus, at least in my mind. Did you like any offensive guys that, even if, let's say, they expanded the search, was there somebody you were kind of craving for? Because for me, it was kind of really Brian Daboll, or I really like the defensive guys more.
I did Tape Never Lies Network, Keeping It 100 last night, and man, it's a lot of Brian Daboll hating the streets out east, man. Like they were coming for his neck, right? Nice. And yeah, people were not convinced on the East Coast that he's a leader of men necessarily. And
don't get me wrong, I'm not convinced either. It's just him with the offensive system.
Right. I didn't know. I totally understand. And it's funny too, because one thing they brought up, and we had talked about this, was the fact that he doesn't really run the football. Remember, they didn't start running the football until like 6 games ago in Buffalo. Like last year, this year, like he falls in love with that pass. He gets pass happy. Again, I told them I'm not going to diss Brian Daboll because I was interested. All right, get it? I hear what you guys are saying. I'm interested. All right, period. So yeah, I would have been interested in Brian because I mean it's similar to Matt Flus from the standpoint of he controls the side of the football. He's not under a coach that is really honed on his side of the football. You know, so with McDermott's a defensive coach. This is your offense. Do what you will. So you feel a little bit more confident than if you were Hackett under Matt LaFleur. You know what I'm saying, to a degree, you know, because you don't know where Matt LaFleur begins and Hackett ends. Right. You know what I'm saying?
And throwing Aaron Rodgers on top of all that.
Totally. And I said that I would too. That's the same reason that I was hesitant on Byron Leftwich, even though I have an affinity for him since Marshall. But you got the GOAT. You got Bruce Arians. At one point last year, Tom Brady implemented more of the offense that he was used to. So I don't know who's doing what in that situation. So right. Brian Daboll was sexy. You know, Brian Flores was a guy that I was interested in. I know you're talking about offense and he's a defensive coach. But I'll say this to get to a point that you made. And I heard a lot of people say this as far as, well, if we get an offensive guy and he clicks, someone's going to pick him up. I'm actually fine if that happens. Because I think the point that we're missing, if that offensive guy is that good and he gets Justin Fields to take off, your next coordinator may not be the right coordinator or is successful. But Justin Fields, if he reaches a certain level, there shouldn't be a certain drop. You know what I'm saying? You may have to go out and get another coordinator. But if you tell me you can get someone to get Justin Fields to that level, bring him in regardless. And I'll worry about what happens later. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need and I've heard this from so many people. This isn't a you thing. This is what a lot of people are saying. Yeah. It's kind of like it's better to have loved and lost than never loved at all. You know what I'm saying? So I rather love on a nice OC to make Justin a Pro Bowler. And then when he gets a head coaching job, hopefully either his QB coach, you know what I'm saying, may be able to step into that role, or you have to do what Mike Tomlin has done in Pittsburgh and you have to go in and bring in somebody else. You know what I'm saying? When he brought in Bruce Arians after what was the head coach with the Cardinals?
Yeah, I'm blanking.
No, not the Cardinals. Ty Haley. After the Ty
Yeah,
Haley fiasco, that's what I'm with the Kansas City Chiefs, not the Kansas City Chiefs. So I bring him in, and especially if he can get Justin really going, and then we'll worry about that problem later on. But I'm not as fearful. And also, as long as Eberflus and it seems like this, it isn't afraid to bring in, and I don't think he is, because let's be honest, part of the problem with Lovey to a degree, outside of not knowing who was a great offensive play caller, Lovey didn't want to bring in anybody that if he had a down year, ownership would be looking at him, you know what, we're going to make you the interim coach. And after the Ron Rivera situation, Lovey never wanted that again. That's just in my opinion. Lovey was never going to really bring in somebody that he hadn't worked with, that was not going to try to take his job or have an opportunity to perhaps take his job.
I'm totally with you on all of that. And that's what I keep kind of coming back to with Flus, talking about some of the positives here. Let's put the leadership aside, but just really quickly, doesn't that kind of show leadership? If you are a true leader of men, you're not worried about building staffs because you are okay with bringing in fresh ideas and the right people. Because what you're hinting at with Lovey, that's poor leadership. Mm-hmm. And that is probably a big part of why offensives didn't succeed here in Chicago, besides personnel. Obviously, that was a big part of it, too, for Lovey. I mean, Jay Cutler is not exactly a franchise quarterback, but it probably doesn't help bringing in Mike Martz to be his offensive coordinator by any means. And obviously, Mike Martz was the safe kind of blanket. But besides the leadership thing, before we kind of get there, I was just kind of thinking about it. Like, let's focus on defense. Don't you think, like, that's not a huge conversion? Like, yes, they're missing pieces, but Mac's been a 4-3 lineman. Robert Quinn likes to be a 4-3 lineman. You don't even have a 3 technique because you're losing Akeem Hicks anyways. We've talked about how many times on the show. They don't have a ton of great defensive linemen. If anything, you got a bunch of noses. So you don't really have...
People are talking about, what's the name of being a 3 technique? Bilal Nichols being a 3 technique. I mean,
I think he'd probably fit there better than what we've seen, but
I'm with you. I'm not saying that you have but you know what though? This is the thing too. If you look at it, they have DeForest Buckner, and then they have on passing downs they have, I forget. I was just reading an article that Alex wrote for NBC Sports Chicago about the I think his last name is Stallworth. That is the 3 technique guy that they put in on passing downs, right? This is the lighter guy. But I mean, primarily they have a nose tackle. They have a nose tackle and DeForest Buckner. So they're really in the ways of going power up the middle than slipping. You know what I'm saying? Like we have with Tommy Harris. You know what I'm saying?
On the edge. And that was going to be my other point. Lovey made it work without Tommy. He still had good defenses when we didn't have a great 3 technique. Flus still had good defenses before he got DeForest Buckner. That didn't just start because of DeForest Buckner. What I love with Flus in terms of comparison to Lovey, this dude's a takeaway machine.
Yeah, consistently too. This isn't just
straight years he's been in the top 10 in takeaways in the NFL.
Dude, and the thing, I'll say this. I'm happy about this, and it crossed my mind while we were talking. I do want to get back to gang tackling and surrounding the ball. Because you don't have the mistakes where someone doesn't touch someone down. You know what I'm saying? Like I miss that. When Lovey brought that, I didn't know how much I was going to miss that. I look forward to seeing
ball on the ground, pick it up.
Everybody, yes, pick it up. I look forward to, because especially while you're trying to build up something, you need those little things that perhaps may get you over the hump. But when you get over the hump, those little things may keep you over the hump. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I look forward to seeing, how he does that. And also, if he can take that meticulous nature and use it on the offensive side. You know what I'm saying? Where because sometimes, okay, your offensive defense coach, his job is to stop offense. He has to know offense to a degree. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to. So especially if he's as intellectual as we've been told. So again, I don't know. Period.
And like just to throw still like Roquan, he'd be a great Will. He'd be a tremendous Will. So you feel good about that. I think Jalen Johnson could be a great cover 2 corner.
Right. What? And they played a lot of man on man there.
Better as a cover 2 safety.
They played a lot of man on man there too.
Yes, they did. And I was listening to JJ Stankovitz with Lawrence Holmes on 670. That's what he was talking about. If the personnel was, hey, we got to play more man because of injury or whatever it is, that's what they did. Like cover two base, but from what it sounds like, he is not married to a scheme. Like Lovey was married to the cover two scheme.
Totally.
Maybe let's get enough wrinkles in there so it's not super predictable, but it was we have these stalwart players that we can count on at the pillar positions of the cover two. So we're just going to run it and run it and run it and run it. And here's a little like ripple or just a little change so that you're not on balance. You're kind of off key as an offense. Back to it.
You're a nickel anyway, majority of the time.
Exactly.
Like how often was we really in a 3-4 for the most part? You're in a nickel for majority.
And how bad were the secondary corners? You know, like you needed to find that whether you're 3-4 or 4-3 or 5-2 or 7-1. It doesn't matter.
I can't wait to now that knowing this direction though, I can't wait to see the players that Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus look to shore up those spots in the cover two. You know, because especially like now, you got to have those safeties and those corners got to be different. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to be different. So I can't, especially what you're asking them to do in the run game. But I'm really looking for. I'm going to be interested. Let me not say I'm looking for because it could fail, but I'm really interested in finding out. And even though I know they don't have a first round pick this year, still, man, I can't wait to draft.
Well, they got a high second, baby.
Top wait to draft time. I can't wait. I can't because listen, it's like unfortunately it's Christmas, and I may have a lump of coal in a couple years, but right now, boy, it's a shiny little toy train. So I'm gonna enjoy it while I can enjoy it, basically.
And you know, with me too, like from what I've seen, another thing that I like about all this doesn't mean it's gonna work. All of the stuff like you said. But Ryan Poles, supposedly his strength is alignment. When we look at the playoffs, we kind of forget, I think, sometimes, like obviously you need the quarterback. But after that, you kind of need the defensive line.
He's an old lineman too. So you're talking about Andy, but yeah, I mean, listen, you built through the trenches.
Lineman evaluator, period, whether it's offensive or defensive, from what I've read. So if you're telling me you've got that mindset, physical, build it in the trenches, then you get this defensive coordinator that's going to want to run the football and take the football away. Doesn't that all kind of fit for Justin Fields to begin with?
And David Montgomery.
Exactly. Doesn't that
Khalil Herbert?
And I thought you hit it on the head. The point, like what we need as Bears fans and as the Bears organization, you need to get Justin to a level where he doesn't need an offensive coordinator, where it's just, we're highlighting what you do, dog, because you are the man. We're not trying to do anything where we're coming up with these plays or these schemes to just totally like fool everybody with your talents and skills. No, we're going to do what you do well. And I love the idea of how about a heavy run game, get Justin Fields running. Let's get some deep downfield play action with which he is the best at downfield throwing. I feel like this can work, like you said. And if you can just get the right guy this year, develop him 1 year, I don't think like how Buffalo's freaking out about Brian Daboll leaving. I don't think Josh Allen's going to fall apart. I really don't.
Nah, bro. Yeah. The only problem with Josh Allen, he's so young, you still need someone to kind of hold on, slow down now. You know what I'm saying? But still, I'm with you. He's reached a level, like the things you saw him do last Sunday, that doesn't go away. You know, like he may become turnover prone, but that now very rarely do you get winced. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what happened to Carson Wentz after he blew his ACL, but very rarely do you get winced with the quarterback.
Doesn't Josh Allen just seem like baseline Matt Stafford?
Man, he's better than that.
I agree, but like you lose Brian Daboll.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I get what you're saying. Yes. He does seem like he could. Worst case scenario, he could be Matthew Stafford with the Detroit Lions with feet though. With feet, but
with feet.
So I mean, get him to a level. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's just what I was gonna say. You just need to get him there enough development, like these early years. because that's the other thing too. Like, I've heard it but back and forth a lot, especially in these playoffs. Like, do the coaches make the player, or do the player just be great, continue to get better, and they're kind of like the reason why? Coaching is there to help, obviously, and it's important, but it's really on the player most of all. Which camp are you in? Because
Right.
I'm sort of in that second camp, and I think Justin Fields has a ton of talent. Now, he needs help developing it, and he needs the right guidance and direction, but I don't think some coach is just going to make guys great. It's really on the player to be great.
I think it's a little bit of both, but what you're saying is true. If the player doesn't have it in them, it's hard to get it out of them. Period. Like you can't pull something out of somebody that does not have it. But you do have a situation with organizations and coaches, but they can make players better, and you hear it with Ballard, Colts people. The thing is, you got to get people that fit, and you know that you can grow them and are willing to grow, and then you realize that some people, even if they're talented, they won't work in your system, and you don't draft them.
I totally agree. And I think we'll see how this plays out, obviously. But I like what I've seen overall. Has the process been perfect? I don't think so by any means. I still don't love interviewing all these coaches. I still don't love that there wasn't extra coaches added to the search after Ryan
Agreed.
Poles was hired. But if
Totally.
you really do love Matt Eberflus, go get him. I have no
Mm-hmm.
problem with that. And the big thing that everybody talks about him, and that's bringing back to what we were talking about earlier, leader of men. That's been a huge void since Lovie Smith left. With Mark
Totally.
Trestman, Matt Nagy might not have been a horrible leader like Mark Trestman, but he wasn't a great leader. We
And
know
he
that for sure.
great one. He didn't cross the T's and dot the I's. Like the attention to like there was just too many penalties
You hit
during
it on
this
the
last era.
How many times, even George brought up in his press conference, beginning of the year, we didn't touch a guy down, scores a touchdown. End of the year, we didn't touch a guy down, scores a touchdown.
Yeah. Like,
Two
dude,
in 1 year.
you can't
It's been
you
way more
that
than that.
I really want to get back, even if it's not to Super Bowls, but to detailed football play and just coach them up.
Meticulous
I missed that.
football.
Yes, I totally missed that. All
I'm
right. We will be back to give you a previews of this weekend's championship games. Make sure to, I'm sure they're going to post it, that you check out Regal Radio. Ryan's going to be on there with Kyle Lakina and Joe breaking down a little bit more football. So go to their YouTube page and make sure you check that out. Always appreciate it. And let us know your thoughts in the comments section as far as how you feel about Ryan Pope and Matt Eberflus. Stay safe and don't do anything stupid before you hear from us again.